Chosen one, stop. Right where you are, stop. Are you tired of praying the same prayer for 20 years and getting silence? Are you exhausted from watching younger generations get breakthrough while you sit in the same chair, in the same struggle, wondering if God put you on the spiritual wait list? Have you ever looked in the mirror at 3 a.m. and whispered, "God, did you forget I'm still here?" Listen to me, chosen one. You didn't accidentally find this message while scrolling through your phone at the kitchen table with lukewarm coffee. You weren't randomly led here while lying awake with that familiar weight pressing down on your chest like a stone. This isn't coincidence. This is divine interception. Heaven just issued an alert with your name on it. Something massive is shifting in the spiritual realm right now, and if you can feel that strange stirring in your chest, that inexplicable restlessness you've carried for weeks, that's not anxiety. That's anticipation. That's your spirit recognizing a frequency from home. Here's what they don't want you to know. This Thursday isn't just another square on your calendar between Wednesday and Friday. Thursday, yes, this Thursday is marked in eternity's datebook as your divine reset button. It's the day heaven has been circling in red ink since before you took your first breath. Why do you think you feel so tired in rooms full of people? Why does your soul ache for something you can't name? Why does everyone else seem to move through life with ease, while you carry invisible weights that make every step feel like climbing mountains? Because you were never meant to blend in with this world. You were sent here, deployed, assigned. But something is coming this Thursday that most people will completely miss. They'll wake up, drink their coffee, check the weather, and treat it like any ordinary day. But you're going to recognize the sound of heaven's footsteps. Before I go deeper into this prophetic word that's burning in my spirit, I want to pause and thank every single one of you who has supported this message through super thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating. You're sowing seeds into a harvest that will feed hungry souls across this nation. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here. Your support, your time, your attention, it all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead and plant that seed of faith. But listen carefully. If you scroll past this moment, if you treat this like just another video, you might miss the divine appointment that's been orchestrated specifically for your breakthrough. Comment, "I'm listening right now," if your spirit is already stirring. Don't think about it, just obey the pull. Because what I'm about to reveal about this Thursday will shatter every limitation you've accepted about your age, your relevance, and your future. The whisper you've been hearing, it's about to become a roar. Why do you wake up every morning feeling like you're carrying stones in your chest? Why does your own reflection look back at you like a stranger who's forgotten their purpose? Why have the last 6 months felt like you're drowning in slow motion while everyone around you seems to be breathing just fine? Dear chosen one, what I'm about to tell you will explain everything. You've been sitting at that same kitchen table for decades, haven't you? The same chair where you used to help your children with homework, where you balanced checkbooks and planned family vacations. But now it feels like a museum exhibit of a life that used to matter. You look around that house, those walls that witnessed your laughter, your tears, your prayer sand, it feels empty. Not because the furniture is gone, but because the world has moved on without asking for your permission. The phone doesn't ring like it used to. Your adult children text instead of call, and those texts feel like breadcrumbs, just enough to keep you from starving for connection, but never enough to fill you. Your grandchildren are buried in devices you don't understand, speaking a digital language that makes you feel like a foreigner in your own family. Here's what's happening to you, and listen carefully because this cuts deeper than age. You are a sealed letter, heaven wrote, but no one has opened you yet. Think about that. For 70, 80, maybe 90 years, you've been carrying something precious, decades of wisdom earned through fire, faith tested in valleys, love that survived betrayal. You're walking around with solutions to problems your family doesn't even know they have yet. You carry stories that could save marriages, prayers that could heal generations, and understanding that could prevent the mistakes you watch others stumble into. But they see your gray hair and assume you're obsolete. They see your slower pace and think you're irrelevant. They look at your wrinkled hands and forget those hands have held miracles, built homes, and wiped away tears that seemed permanent. The psalmist cried out in Psalm 71-9, "Do not cast me away when I am old. Do not forsake me when my strength is gone." David wrote those words because he knew something that terrifies every generation, the fear that your value expires with your youth. But here's where the enemy has been lying to you, and this lie has been suffocating your spirit like smoke. Society whispers, "You're done. Your time has passed. Step aside and let the young ones take over." But that's not God's voice. That's the voice of a culture that worships energy over wisdom, innovation over insight, volume over virtue. You think you're being forgotten, but you've been hidden. There's a profound difference. When something is forgotten, it loses value. But when something is hidden, it's being preserved for the right moment. Think about the woman with the alabaster box hidden for years, waiting for Jesus. Think about the widow's oil hidden in the vessel until the prophet called it forth. Think about David hidden in the fields while his brothers stood in the palace. God doesn't hide what he's finished with. He hides what he's preparing to reveal. But I need to tell you something that might shock you. That weariness you feel, that bone-deep exhaustion that 8 hours of sleep can't touch. That's not your body giving up, that's your spirit recognizing that something is about to shift. You're not tired because you're old. You're tired because you've been holding a frequency that this world can't match. You've been like a radio trying to pick up heaven's signal while surrounded by static. Every day you wake up knowing there's more, feeling there's purpose, sensing there's significance, but the world keeps telling you to turn down the volume and settle into silence. Listen to me carefully. The isolation you feel isn't punishment, it's preparation. The silence isn't abandonment, it's the calm before the roar. The emptiness you're experiencing isn't evidence that your story is ending, it's evidence that your greatest chapter is about to begin. Moses was 80 when the burning bush called his name. 80. The world would have given him a retirement party, but God gave him a mission that would echo through eternity. Sarah laughed at 90 when God promised her a child, not because it was funny, but because she had to choose between what seemed impossible and what God declared inevitable. Your age isn't your limitation, it's your qualification. Your years aren't your weakness, they're your weapons. Your experience isn't your past, it's your preparation. But here's the urgency that should grip your heart right now. How many more mornings are you going to waste believing the lie that your best days are behind you? How many more nights are you going to fall asleep, feeling invisible when heaven has been positioning you for visibility? How many more weeks are you going to let the enemy convince you that your voice doesn't matter when God has been tuning it for this exact moment? Comment, "I felt this" if these words are reading your heart like an open book. Type, "This is me" if you recognize your story in these sentences. Because what I'm about to reveal next will shatter every limitation you've accepted about Thursday's significance in your spiritual journey. The weariness you've been carrying isn't random, it's been building towards something specific, and that something has a date attached to it. But first, you need to understand why this particular Thursday isn't just marked on your calendar, it's been circled in heaven's datebook since before time began. Listen to me very carefully, chosen one. What I'm about to tell you is going to shake the very foundations of how you see time itself. You've been living your life thinking that days are just days. Monday bleeds into Tuesday, Tuesday crawls into Wednesday, and Thursday. Well, Thursday has always been just another step toward the weekend. But what if I told you that's the greatest deception the enemy has ever whispered in your ear? What if I told you that heaven doesn't operate on your calendar? See, while you've been counting days like beads on a string, God has been marking moments, divine appointments, kairos moments that break through chronos time like lightning splitting the night sky. And this Thursday, mark this down. This Thursday is not just a square on your calendar, it's a spiritual gateway, a burning bush day. Let me ask you something that's going to cut deep. How many Thursdays have you let slip by, thinking they were ordinary? How many divine appointments have you missed because you were looking for God to move on a Sunday when he was whispering on a weekday? Moses was 80 years old, tending sheep in the wilderness, probably thinking his best days were behind him. Just another ordinary day in the desert. But then he saw Eta bush burning but not consumed. Exodus 3:3 says, Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. That wasn't just curiosity, beloved. That was destiny calling. But here's what will shatter your understanding. Moses could have walked past that bush. He could have been too busy, too tired, too convinced that miracles don't happen to old shepherds on ordinary Thursdays. And if he had, the entire course of human history would have changed. You think I'm being dramatic? The liberation of 2 million slaves hung on one man's decision to investigate a burning bush on what started as an ordinary day. Now listen to this with your spirit, not just your ears. The same God who orchestrated Moses' burning bush moment 3,000 years ago has been orchestrating your burning bush moment for this Thursday. The same divine intelligence that parted the Red Sea has been preparing a divine intersection in your life that will split your struggles in half. Ecclesiastes 3:1 declares, To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. But the Hebrew word for time there isn't chronos, it's kairos, appointed time, strategic time, God's perfect timing that breaks through human schedules and changes everything in an instant. Thursday is your kairos moment. But you want to know why most people miss their burning bush? Because they're looking for thunder when God speaks in whispers. They're expecting earthquakes when God moves in gentle breezes. They're waiting for Sunday morning revelation when God often delivers breakthroughs on a Tuesday afternoon or a Thursday evening. 1 Kings 19:12 tells us that when Elijah was hiding in a cave, God wasn't in the wind, the earthquake, or the fire. He was in a gentle whisper. And here's what breaks my heart though. Many gentle whispers have you dismissed as coincidence. How many divine nudges have you ignored because they came wrapped in ordinary moments? This Thursday, something is shifting in the spiritual realm over your life. I can feel it in my spirit as I speak these words. Angels are positioning themselves. Demonic assignments are being reassigned. Your name is being spoken in heavenly councils, not because you've earned it through perfect behavior, but because God has marked this moment in eternity. Daniel 2:21 reminds us that God changes times and seasons. He doesn't just observe time, he controls it. He speeds it up, slows it down, and sometimes stops it altogether to speak to his chosen ones. Remember when the sun stood still for Joshua? Remember when the shadow went backward for Hezekiah? God interrupted the natural order because some moments are too important to leave to chance. Your Thursday is one of those moments. But I need you to understand something that might terrify you. Divine appointments have expiration dates. When Jesus walked through the crowds, some people pressed in to touch the hem of his garment, while others just watched him pass by. Same proximity, same opportunity, but different levels of desperation, different degrees of recognition. Mark 5:30 says that when the woman with the issue of blood touched Jesus' robe, he realized that power had gone out from him. Power was available to everyone in that crowd, but only one woman had the spiritual sensitivity to draw it out. Are you spiritually sensitive enough to recognize your Thursday moment when it comes? Or will you be like the 9 lepers who were healed but never returned to say thank you? Like the thousands who ate the fish and bread but missed the miracle? Here's the prophetic word burning in my chest. God circled this Thursday in eternity before you were born, before your first heartbeat, before your first breath, before your parents even met. The Ancient of Days looked down the corridor of time and marked this specific Thursday as the day he would intersect your ordinary life with his extraordinary purpose. Jeremiah 1:5 declares, Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. You weren't just known, you were set apart, marked, chosen for specific moments like this Thursday. But here's what's going to shock you. Thursday isn't coming to you, you're approaching Thursday. Every day you've lived, every trial you've endured, every victory you've won has been preparation for this divine appointment. Your entire life has been a countdown to Thursday. Something's about to happen, but only the watchful will catch it. Only those with eyes to see and ears to hear will recognize the sound of heaven's footsteps. While the world sleeps through their breakthrough, you're going to be awake, alert, ready. Write Thursday's date in the comments right now. Don't think about it. Just obey the pull, mark it down. Because what you acknowledge in faith, heaven acknowledges in power. What you expect with anticipation, God delivers with acceleration. But here's the question that will determine everything. When Thursday arrives, will you be looking for your burning bush, or will you walk past it because you're too focused on your schedule, your problems, your limitations? Don't ignore the whisper, chosen one. Because the gentle voice calling your name this Thursday, it's the same voice that spoke worlds into existence. And now I need to tell you something about the warfare you've been experiencing lately, because what you've been calling random attacks have actually been strategic resistance to what's coming Thursday. Let me ask you something that's going to cut straight to your soul, chosen one. Why are you still here? Think about it. Really think about it. You've buried your best friend from high school. You've stood at gravesides watching dirt fall on caskets that held people half your age. You've outlived your spouse, the one who knew your coffee order, who understood your silence, who held your hand through 47 years of marriage. You've watched your generation disappear one by one, like candles being blown out in a darkening room. So why? Why are you still breathing? You think it's luck? You think it's good genes? You think it's because you ate your vegetables and took your vitamins? No, beloved. You are heaven's secret weapon dressed in wrinkles and wisdom. Every morning you wake. You every single morning is a divine statement from the throne room of God declaring, I'm not finished with you yet. That heartbeat in your chest isn't just a biological function. It's a war drum. It's heaven's percussion section announcing that the battle isn't over, the mission isn't complete, the story isn't finished. But here's what's been breaking my heart, and maybe it's been breaking yours too. You've been sitting in that same chair, looking out that same window, wondering if your best days are buried 6 feet under with everyone else you've loved. You've been telling yourself the lie that survival equals sidelining, that longevity means irrelevance. You've watched your own children treat you like a relic from a bygone era. You've felt invisible in a world that worships youth and dismisses experience. You've wondered if God kept you here just to be a witness to decline, a spectator to your own fade into insignificance. That's not just wrong, that's demonic. Listen to me carefully, dear one. The enemy has been whispering the same lie in your ear for years. You outlived your purpose. You missed your moment. You're just taking up space until Jesus calls you home. But what if I told you the opposite is true? What if I told you that you didn't outlive your generation? You were preserved to deliver it. Isaiah 46:4 declares with thunderous authority, even to your old age I am he, and even to grey hairs I will carry you. I have made, and I will bear, even I will carry, and will deliver you. Did you catch that? Even with grey hairs I will carry you, not I carried you, present tense, active, ongoing. God isn't reminiscing about what he used to do through you. He's declaring what he's still doing through you. You think those grey hairs are signs of decline. They're crowns of glory. You think those wrinkles are marks of deterioration. They're etchings of wisdom carved by decades of walking with the Almighty. You think that slower pace is a weakness. It's the measured walk of someone who's learned to move in divine timing instead of human urgency. But here's where it gets prophetic, and I need you to lean in close, because this is going to revolutionize how you see your entire life story. Every friend you buried taught you something about eternity that the young generation has never learned. Every loss you endured deepened your capacity for intercession in ways that comfortable living never could. Every year you've walked this earth has been depositing spiritual currency into an account you didn't even know existed. You've been in the school of hard knocks, but the curriculum was designed by heaven. That depression you lived through in the 1930s, that wasn't just economic hardship that was training in trusting God when everything visible fails. That world war you witnessed, that wasn't just global conflict, that was education in recognizing evil and standing for righteousness when the whole world seems to have lost its mind. That civil rights era you walked through, that wasn't just social change, that was preparation for spiritual warfare. Learning to fight for justice when injustice seems insurmountable. Every decade you've survived has been equipping you with weapons the younger generation doesn't possess. They have energy, but you have endurance. They have passion, but you have proven faithfulness. They have dreams, but you have tested faith. And right now, in this moment of American history, when confusion reigns and truth seems negotiable, when families are fracturing and faith is failing, God is looking for voices that have been seasoned by time, tested by fire, and proven by perseverance. He's not looking for the untested, he's looking for the unshakable. You didn't survive everything you've survived by accident. You didn't outlast everyone you've outlasted by coincidence. You are not a leftover from a forgotten generation. You are a chosen remnant for such a time as this. But this Thursday heaven is about to activate something in you that's been dormant for decades. Something that's been buried under years of being told to slow down, step aside, make room for the next generation. Thursday is the day God stops whispering and starts roaring through your life. Because the world needs what you carry. This generation is dying for wisdom, starving for stability, desperate for someone who's walked with God long enough to know that He's faithful even when everything looks impossible. If you're still here, after everything hell has thrown at you, you're still standing, still believing, still breathing, comment, I'm still here for a reason. Because survival wasn't an accident, it was an assignment. And Thursday is when that assignment gets activated in ways that will shock even you. But the question burning in heaven's heart right now is this: will you finally stop seeing your age as a disqualification and start seeing it as your greatest weapon? Listen to me very carefully, chosen one. I need you to stop and think about something that's going to shake you to your core. Have you felt it this week? That strange heaviness that settled over your spirit like a thick fog, the sudden onset of depression that made no sense, the sleepless nights where your mind raced with worries that weren't even real, the physical exhaustion that no amount of rest could cure. You thought something was wrong with you. You blamed your age. You blamed your circumstances. You blamed your health. But what if I told you that every single attack you've experienced this week, very anxiety spike, every moment of despair, every wave of confusion wasn't random? What if I told you it was strategic warfare launched from the pit of hell itself? You see, dear soul, you've been under siege because you carry the blueprint. Think about this. Why would the enemy waste his ammunition on someone insignificant? Why would demonic forces mobilize against someone ordinary? The very fact that you've been hammered this hard, this consistently, this relentlessly, is undeniable proof that you're carrying something that terrifies the kingdom of darkness. Let me ask you something that's going to cut deep. When did the attacks intensify? Was it right after you started praying more fervently? Was it the moment you began to sense God moving in your life again? Was it exactly when you started believing that maybe, just maybe, your best days weren't behind you? That wasn't a coincidence. That was confirmation. The Bible tells us in Daniel chapter 10 about a prophet who prayed for 21 days and got nothing but silence. But an angel finally appeared and said, "From the first day that you set your heart to understand and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I have come because of your words. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. Do you understand what that means?" Daniel's prayers were heard immediately, but demonic forces were literally blocking the answer. For 3 weeks, spiritual warfare raged in the heavenly realm, while Daniel wondered if God had forgotten him. Sound familiar? That depression that hit you Monday morning like a freight train, that was demonic interference. That sudden financial pressure that came out of nowhere, that was spiritual sabotage. That health scare that sent you spiraling into panic, that was a weapon of warfare aimed directly at your faith. But here's what the enemy doesn't want you to know, and this is going to revolutionize everything you thought about. Your struggle's demonic backlash always precedes divine breakthrough. Always. When Pharaoh heard that Moses was coming to deliver Israel, what did he do? He doubled their workload, made their lives harder, increased their suffering. Why? Because he knew his time was up. When a kingdom is about to fall, it fights the hardest. The very intensity of this week's warfare is a prophecy in disguise. It's hell's desperate attempt to stop what heaven has already set in motion. Think about a woman in labor. The closer she gets to delivery, the more intense the contractions become. The pain doesn't mean something's wrong, it means something's about to be born. And what have you been experiencing this week? Those aren't the labor pains of defeat. Those are the contractions of destiny about to break forth. Jesus himself warned us in John 16:33, "In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world." Notice, he didn't say you might have trouble. He said you will have trouble. But he also promised that the trouble has an expiration date, because the victory is already won. Right now, as I'm speaking these words, some of you are feeling something shift in your spirit. You're realizing that the warfare you've endured wasn't evidence of God's absence, it was evidence of his approaching presence. You're understanding that what looked like breakdown was actually prelude to birth. The enemy saw Thursday coming before you did. He saw what God had marked on his calendar, and he panicked. So he launched a preemptive strike. He tried to take you out before you could walk into your moment. But he made one fatal mistake. He showed his hand too early. By attacking you so viciously, he revealed that you're carrying something he desperately wants to stop. By coming after you so hard, he confirmed that your Thursday appointment is real, it's powerful, and it's going to cost him territory. 1 Peter 5-8 warns us, "Be sober-minded, be watchful." Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. But here's what most people miss: lions don't roar when they're hunting. They roar when they're trying to scare away threats to their territory. The roar you've been hearing this week, that's not the sound of a predator about to devour you. That's the sound of a defeated enemy trying to intimidate you into retreating. But you're not retreating, are you? You're still here. You're still fighting. You're still believing. That's not luck. That's supernatural grace keeping you standing when everything in hell tries to knock you down. The warfare intensified because your breakthrough is imminent. The attacks escalated because your elevation is inevitable. The pressure increased because your promotion is just hours away. If you've felt strange warfare this week, if every day felt like walking through spiritual quicksand, say, "That's me," in the comments right now. Let heaven take notice that you're still standing. Let the enemy know that his attacks only confirmed what you're carrying. Because the chosen one, what the enemy meant for destruction, God is about to turn into demonstration. Every tear you've cried this week is about to become a testimony. Every battle you've fought is about to become a victory speech. But here's what you need to understand as we approach Thursday's divine appointment. The warfare you've survived has qualified you for the authority you're about to receive. Dear chosen one, I need you to stop believing the greatest lie the enemy has ever whispered in your ear. Stop believing that your best days are behind you. Stop believing that God's done using people like you. Stop believing that at 70, 80, or 90 years old, you're supposed to fade quietly into the background while the world moves on without you. That's not just wrong, it's demonic. Look at me through this screen. Look at me and hear this truth that's going to shatter every limitation you've placed on yourself. You are not too old, you are right on time. And this Thursday is not the end of your story, it's the beginning of your legacy. How many times have you sat in that chair, looking out the window, wondering if anyone would notice if you just disappeared? How many sleepless nights have you spent feeling like you've become invisible in your own family, irrelevant in your own church, forgotten by the very God you've served faithfully for decades? But what if I told you that feeling of being overlooked wasn't abandonment, it was preparation? What if every year you thought was wasted was actually building something inside you that only comes with time, with testing, with the kind of refined faith that can only be forged in the furnace of real life? Listen to me carefully. God doesn't put his most valuable players on the bench when the final quarter begins. He doesn't retire his generals when the greatest battle approaches. He doesn't set aside his most seasoned warriors when victory depends on experience, wisdom, and unshakable trust. Let me tell you something about Moses that's going to rock your world. When God called him to deliver an entire nation from bondage, Moses was 80 years old. 80. In a time when life expectancy was maybe 45 years, God looked at an old shepherd with a speech impediment and said, "Now you're ready." Think about that. Moses spent 40 years thinking he was somebody in Pharaoh's palace. Then he spent another 40 years thinking he was nobody in the wilderness. But it wasn't until he was 80, when society would have put him out to pasture, that God said, "Your greatest chapter begins now." Exodus 7:7 tells us, Moses was 80 years old and Aaron 83 when they spoke to Pharaoh. God didn't need their youthful energy, he needed their weathered wisdom. He needed men who had been broken of their own strength and rebuilt on his foundation. But Moses isn't alone in this hall of faith. Sarah was 90 years old when she gave birth to Isaac. 90, when her body was far past its season, when logic said it was impossible, when even she laughed at God's promise. That's when heaven said, "Watch what I can do through a womb that surrendered to my timing." Genesis 21:5 records it for eternity. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. 100 years old. These weren't young parents stumbling through their first pregnancy. These were seasoned saints who had learned that God's timeline doesn't match earthly expectations. And then there's Anna. Oh, beloved Anna. Luke 2:36-37 tells us she was 84 years old, a widow who had spent decades in the temple, praying and fasting, while everyone else had given up hope, while younger voices proclaimed their own revelations. It was Anna, overlooked Anna, who was positioned by God to be among the first to recognize the Messiah when he appeared. Do you see the pattern? Do you understand what heaven is trying to tell you through these stories? Your age isn't your disqualification, it's your qualification. Your wrinkles aren't marks of decline, they're evidence of endurance. Your slower pace isn't a weakness, it's the measured walk of someone who knows where they're going, because they've already been where you're trying to go. But here's what's breaking my heart right now. Here's what's making my spirit groan with urgency. So many of you have bought the lie that retirement means retiring from purpose. You've believed the deception that Medicare eligibility equals spiritual expiration. You've accepted the narrative that your season of significance is over. Stop it, right now. Stop agreeing with the voice of limitation when God is calling you to step into the greatest assignment of your life. You want to know why you're still here? You want to know why you survived that heart attack at 67 when others didn't? Why did you outlive your spouse who seemed so much stronger? Why are you still breathing when cancer tries to take you out? Why are you still standing when depression tries to bury you? Because your assignment isn't finished, it's peaking. God didn't preserve you through 7 decades of life just so you could spend your final years playing it safe. He didn't allow you to accumulate all that wisdom, all that experience, all that tested faith, just so you could keep it to yourself. This generation needs what you carry. These young people drowning in anxiety need to see what real peace looks like. These families falling apart need to witness what committed love actually means. These communities crumbling under pressure need the stability that only comes from walking with God through every season of life. But the enemy has been whispering lies in your ear, hasn't he? You're too old. Nobody listens to old people anymore. Your time has passed. Just sit down and wait to die. Those aren't just thoughts, chosen ones. Those are weapons aimed at your destiny, because hell knows something about you that you're just beginning to remember. Hell knows that when someone who's been tested by fire finally stands up and speaks, mountains move. When someone who's been refined by decades of following God finally steps into their authority, kingdoms shift. You're not the candle flickering out in the wind. You're the torch God is raising to light up the darkness of this hour. Caleb understood this when he was 85 years old. While others his age were settling into comfortable retirement, Caleb looked at the biggest mountain in the promised land and declared in Joshua 14:12, "Give me this mountain, give me the giants, give me the impossible, give me the very thing that terrifies everyone else." That's not the cry of someone who's finished. That's the roar of someone who's just getting started. Your gray hair isn't a sign of decay, it's a crown of glory. Proverbs 16:31 declares, "Gray hair is a crown of splendor. It is attained in the way of righteousness. Your years aren't evidence that you're running out of time, they're proof that you've been running with purpose. This Thursday that heaven has marked isn't coming to retire you, it's coming to activate you, to awaken something in your spirit that's been dormant, waiting for the right moment when wisdom meets anointing, when experience meets divine purpose. But I need you to make a choice right now. I need you to decide whether you're going to keep living like you're done, or whether you're going to rise up and claim the mantle that's been waiting for you to wear it. Because somewhere in America tonight, there's a young mother about to give up on her marriage who needs to hear from someone who stayed faithful for 50 years. Somewhere there's a businessman facing bankruptcy who needs wisdom from someone who's seen God provide in impossible situations. Somewhere there's a teenager contemplating suicide who needs to meet someone whose very presence proves that life is worth living, that God is still faithful, that there's hope beyond their current pain. They don't need another motivational speaker. They need a living testimony. They need someone whose very existence is proof that God keeps his promises, that faithfulness pays off, that the best wine truly is saved for last, that someone is you. But only if you stop believing you're finished and start declaring what God is declaring over your life right now. Say it with me. Say it out loud, wherever you are. My mantle didn't retire, it's rising. Say it again, louder this time. My mantle didn't retire, it's rising. Because what God is about to release through you this Thursday won't just change your life. It's going to alter the trajectory of everyone connected to your obedience. But first, you need to understand something that's going to shake you to your core. You need to understand why this Thursday carries weight that could shift not just your destiny, but the destiny of generations you'll never meet. Now that you understand you're not finished, that your mantle is rising, not retiring, I need you to lean in close, because what I'm about to tell you will determine whether Thursday becomes your breakthrough or just another missed appointment with destiny. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. God is about to give you a specific instruction this Thursday, not a suggestion, not a gentle nudge, an instruction. And your obedience to that instruction will either unlock the greatest chapter of your life or leave you wondering for the rest of your days what could have been. How many burning bushes have you walked past in your lifetime because you were too busy, too distracted, or too convinced that God speaks to everyone except you? How many divine appointments have you missed because you treated the supernatural like it was ordinary? Moses almost did the same thing. Exodus 3:3 tells us, "So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up." Notice that Moses thought about investigating. He could have kept walking. He could have shrugged it off as desert heat playing tricks on his eyes. But something made him turn aside. That something was curiosity mixed with desperation. 40 years in the wilderness had taught Moses to pay attention when heaven interrupted earth. And right now, chosen one, heaven is interrupting your ordinary Thursday with an extraordinary opportunity. But unlike Moses, who saw fire with his eyes, your burning bush might look completely different. It might be the phone ringing at an unusual time with someone you haven't heard from in years. It might be a sudden, unexplainable urge to write a letter you've been putting off. It might be a dream so vivid you wake up with tears on your pillow. It might be an old photo falling out of a book you haven't touched in decades. Don't you dare dismiss it as coincidence. God doesn't operate by coincidences. He operates in divine appointments. And this Thursday, He's scheduling one with you. But here's what's going to test every fiber of your faith. The instruction might not make sense. It might feel too small. It might seem irrelevant to your current crisis. It might even feel embarrassing. When Naaman was told to dip 7 times in the muddy Jordan River to be healed of leprosy, he almost missed his miracle because the instruction seemed too simple. 2 Kings 5:11 records his frustration. But Naaman went away angry and said, "I thought that he would surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, wave his hand over the spot and cure me of my leprosy." Naaman wanted drama. God gave him simplicity. Naaman expected spectacle. God required obedience. What if your Thursday instruction is equally simple? What if God tells you to call that estranged child who broke your heart? What if he tells you to forgive that person who stole from you? What if he tells you to sow a financial seed when your bank account is already stretched thin? Will you obey the whisper, or will you demand the whirlwind? Because here's what I know about divine instructions: they always cost you something. They always require you to move beyond your comfort zone. They always demand faith that goes against natural logic. Abraham was told to leave everything familiar and go to a place he'd never seen. Isaac was told to stay in Canaan during a famine when everyone else was fleeing to Egypt. Jacob was told to return to the very brother who wanted to kill him. Every divine instruction carries divine risk, but it also carries divine reward. Think about this. What if the phone call you're avoiding is the one that reconciles your family? What if the conversation you're dreading is the one that saves someone's life? What if the step of obedience you think is too small actually triggers an avalanche of blessing that changes your entire bloodline? You've been sitting on instructions for years, haven't you? You've had whispers you've ignored, promptings you've postponed, nudges you've negotiated away. And every time you said maybe later, or that doesn't make sense, or I'm too old for that, you stepped away from your burning bush. But Thursday is different. Thursday carries urgency. Thursday won't wait for your perfect timing or your complete understanding. In 1 Kings 17, God told Elijah to go to a widow in Zarephath during a severe famine. The instruction made no sense. Why would a man of God ask a starving widow to feed him? But Elijah obeyed the seemingly cruel command, and his obedience saved 3 lives and performed the first recorded resurrection in Scripture. Your Thursday instruction might feel just as impossible. It might require you to give when you need to receive. It might call you to speak when you'd rather stay silent. It might demand you go when you'd rather stay home. But what if your obedience to that impossible instruction becomes the very thing that breaks the drought in your family's finances? What if it opens the door to the healing you've prayed for? What if it positions you for the miracle you've been believing for? Here's what I need you to understand. This Thursday, instruction isn't just about you. It's about everyone connected to your obedience. Your children, your grandchildren, your neighbors, your church, people you'll never meet but whose lives will be touched by the ripple effect of your eyes. When the widow at Zarephath obeyed Elijah's instruction to feed him first, she didn't just get enough oil and flour to survive the famine. Her obedience unlocked a supernatural supply that lasted for over 3 years. Her temporary sacrifice became permanent provision. That's what happens when you obey divine instructions that don't make earthly sense. But I need to warn you about something that's going to try to steal your Thursday breakthrough: analysis paralysis. The enemy's favorite weapon against divine instructions isn't direct rebellion, it's endless reasoning. You'll hear that voice saying, "Wait, let me think about this. Let me pray about it more. Let me make sure this is really God." And while you're analyzing, the moment passes. While you're reasoning, the door closes. While you're debating, the opportunity evaporates. Moses didn't analyze the burning bush to death. He turned aside and said, "Here I am." Mary didn't debate the angel's announcement. She said, "Let it be unto me according to your word." The disciples didn't negotiate Jesus' call to follow him. They dropped their nets immediately. Divine instructions require immediate obedience, not extended contemplation. So, let me ask you this. Are you going to trust God enough to obey even when it doesn't make sense? Are you willing to step into Thursday with your spiritual ears open and your heart ready to respond? Are you prepared to turn aside when heaven calls your name? Because this isn't just another day. This is the day that divides your life into before and after. This is the day that determines whether you spend your remaining years wondering what if, or celebrating what God did when you finally said yes. But here's what's going to shock you most about Thursday's instruction. It's not just about your personal breakthrough. What God is about to ask you to do will expose why the enemy has fought you so hard, and why your obedience will trigger something that hell never saw coming. But now I need to ask you a question that's going to cut deeper than any sword. A question that's going to haunt you if you don't face it honestly right now. What if you miss it? What if this Thursday, this divine appointment that heaven has been orchestrating for decades, comes and goes, and you treat it like just another ordinary day? What if the instruction comes and you're too busy watching the news to hear it? What if the phone rings with your miracle and you let it go to voicemail because you don't recognize the number? What if you walk past your burning bush because you're looking at your feet instead of lifting your eyes? I need you to sit with that weight for a moment. Really sit with it. Because somewhere in the graveyard of missed opportunities lie the bones of people who had their moment and let it slip through their fingers like sand. What if Noah had looked at that first dark cloud and shrugged? Looks like rain. Nothing I haven't seen before. What if he had dismissed God's warning as just another weather pattern and never built the ark? 8 people would have drowned with the rest of humanity. The entire future of mankind hung on one man's willingness to take God seriously when everyone else thought he was crazy. What if Moses had glanced at that burning bush and kept walking? Desert heat playing tricks again. I've got sheep to tend. The children of Israel would have died in Egyptian bondage. 400 years of crying out to God would have ended in silence because one shepherd was too busy with his routine to investigate the miraculous. What if Mary had told the angel, "This is impossible. Come back when I'm married, and this makes more sense"? The salvation of humanity would have waited for another virgin willing to say yes to the impossible. But it gets more personal than biblical history, doesn't it? What if your grandmother had ignored that prompting to pray for you when you were 16 and heading down the wrong path? What if your grandfather had dismissed that urge to move the family to a different state and you'd grown up in circumstances that would have destroyed your future? How many times has your life been saved by someone else's obedience to a divine instruction they could have easily ignored? And now it's your turn. Now you're the one standing at the crossroads between ordinary and miraculous. Now you're the one who will either respond to heaven's call or let it echo unanswered into eternity. Do you know what terrifies me more than anything else? It's the thought of you sitting in that same chair 5 years from now, staring out that same window, carrying the weight of regret that could have been avoided. It's imagining you lying on your deathbed, whispering, "What if I had just listened? What if I had just obeyed?" Because here's the brutal truth about missed divine appointments. They don't come around again. When God moves, when heaven opens, when eternity intersects with time, that moment is sacred, and it's singular. Esther understood this when Mordecai told her, "If you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? For such a time as this, not for such a time as that, not when it's more convenient, not when you feel more prepared, for this time. And if you miss it, God will find another way. He'll raise someone else. He'll use a different vessel. But you'll have forfeited the very reason you were born, the very purpose for which you've survived every trial, every heartbreak, every setback that should have taken you out but didn't. How many people do you think have walked this earth carrying a destiny they never fulfilled because they were too afraid to step outside their comfort zone? How many potential deliverers stayed in their wilderness because the burning bush looked too dangerous to investigate? How many would-be heroes remained ordinary because they couldn't recognize their extraordinary moment? You think your struggles have been random. You think your pain has been pointless. You think you've endured 70, 80, 90 years of life just to fade away, unnoticed? Every battle you've fought has been preparing you for this Thursday. Every tear you've cried has been watering the ground for this harvest. Every time you should have quit but didn't, every time you should have given up but held on, every time you should have broken but somehow found the strength to bend it, was all leading to this moment. And what if you miss it? What if your children spend the rest of their lives wondering what their parent could have become if they'd just had the courage to answer when heaven called? What if your grandchildren inherit a legacy of almost instead of accomplished? What if your name becomes a cautionary tale instead of a celebration? I'm not trying to manipulate you with fear. I'm trying to wake you up with the truth. Because the same God who gave you this many years on earth, the same God who sustained you through every crisis, the same God who kept you alive when death knocked on your door multiple times, He's been saving you for something. But what if you treat Thursday like it's just another day between Wednesday and Friday? What if you wake up, drink your coffee, check the weather, and miss the divine download that could change everything. The widow at Zarephath was down to her last meal. One handful of flour, one drop of oil. She was preparing to eat and die. But when Elijah asked her to make him bread first, she had a choice. Hold on to what little she had, or risk it all on a prophet's promise. She could have said, "Come back tomorrow when I have more." She could have said, "Ask someone else who can afford to give." She could have missed her miracle by protecting her poverty. But she didn't. She gave her last. And her obedience unlocked a supernatural supply that lasted for years. Because if you do, there's something else you need to understand. Something that will shake you to your very core about what Thursday's obedience will unleash, not just for you, but for a generation that's been waiting for someone brave enough to say yes when heaven calls. Now I need to tell you something that's going to make your soul tremble with holy reverence. Something so profound, so weighty, that you'll never look at this Thursday the same way again. Right now, this very moment, there's a courtroom session happening in the heavenlies. Not a metaphor, not a spiritual illustration. An actual divine proceeding where your name is being called, your file is being opened, and your entire destiny is being reviewed by the Ancient of Days himself. Heaven's courtroom is not a metaphor, it's a moment. And that moment is now. Do you remember the story in Esther chapter 6? King Ahasuerus couldn't sleep. In the middle of the night, he called for the royal chronicles to be read to him. As the scribe read through the records, the king discovered that Mordecai had once saved his life and had never been rewarded for it. That sleepless night changed everything. What looked like insomnia was actually divine intervention. What seemed like random restlessness was heaven orchestrating a promotion that would save an entire nation. Well, chosen one, heaven is up late reading your scroll. While you've been wondering if God has forgotten you, he's been turning pages in your file. While you've been questioning if your faithfulness matters, he's been reviewing every entry, every sacrifice, every moment you chose obedience over comfort. Malachi 3:16 tells us, "Then those who feared the Lord talked with each other, and the Lord listened and heard." A scroll of remembrance was written in his presence concerning those who feared the Lord and honored his name. A scroll of remembrance. Your scroll. Every prayer you whispered in secret, every tear you shed in silence, every time you got back up when staying down would have been easier. Every act of faithfulness when no one was watching. It's all there, recorded, documented, preserved in the archives of eternity. But here's what's happening this week that's different from every other week of your life. The divine court is in session, and your case is being called, not for judgment, for promotion, not for condemnation, for commendation. There are moments in life when heaven opens your file not to punish, but to promote. And Thursday is your day in court. Think about Daniel chapter 7. The court was seated, and the books were opened. The Ancient of Days took his seat, and the records were reviewed. But this wasn't a trial for punishment. It was a proceeding for vindication, for restoration, for the settling of accounts that had been delayed but never forgotten. You've been living under delayed justice, haven't you? You've watched people who wronged you prosper while you struggled. You've seen those who betrayed you advance while you waited in the shadows. You've endured decades of what felt like cosmic unfairness. But what if I told you that every injustice you've suffered has been carefully documented? What if every tear you've cried has been collected as evidence? What if every act of mercy you've shown when you received none has been recorded as testimony in your favor? Revelation 20:12 declares, "And I saw the dead, great and small, standing before the throne, and books were opened." But those books aren't just about final judgment. They're about divine accounting. They're about God settling scores that earthly courts never could. This Thursday is not just a day, it's a divine court session. And your obedience is your testimony. Let me tell you what's written in your file. Let me read you the entries that heaven has been recording while you thought no one was paying attention. Entry 1, tithed faithfully even when the bills exceeded the income. Entry 2, forgave repeatedly when forgiveness seemed impossible. Entry 3, served without recognition for 47 years. Entry 4, prayed for those who persecuted them. Entry 5, chose love when bitterness would have been justified. Page after page after page of faithful obedience. Decades of choosing God's way when the world's way looked easier. But here's the rhythm that's been playing in the courtroom of heaven as your case is being reviewed. What you obey, heaven records. What you ignore, time remembers. What you say yes to, eternity echoes. Every Thursday you've lived through has been preparation for this Thursday. Every small act of obedience has been building evidence in your favor. Every moment you chose faith over fear has been adding weight to your testimony. Do you understand what this means? Do you grasp the magnitude of what's happening in the spiritual realm right now? The same God who heard Abel's blood crying from the ground has been hearing your faithfulness crying from the secret place. The same God who remembered Noah when the floods covered the earth has remembered you when the storms of life threaten to drown your hope. But courtrooms require response. When your name is called, when the evidence is presented, when the verdict is ready to be rendered, you have to show up. What if the instruction you receive this Thursday is actually heaven's way of asking you to take the stand? What if God is saying, come forward and receive what your faithfulness has earned? In earthly courts, justice delayed is often justice denied. But in heaven's courtroom, delayed justice is often multiplied justice. What you should have received 20 years ago comes back with compound interest. What was stolen from you in your 40s gets restored sevenfold in your 70s. But you have to be present when your case is called. You have to be listening when the instruction comes. You have to be willing to step forward when heaven says, rise. How many people have had their names called in heaven's courtroom only to miss their moment because they were too busy with earthly concerns? How many divine verdicts have gone undelivered because the recipient wasn't paying attention when their case came up for review? King Ahasuerus asked that night, what honor and recognition has Mordecai received for saving the king's life? The answer was devastating. Nothing has been done for him. Nothing. After saving the king's life, Mordecai had received nothing. But by the next morning, everything changed. The very man who had plotted Mordecai's destruction was forced to parade him through the streets, proclaiming his honor before the entire kingdom. What if your Thursday is the morning after heaven's sleepless night? What if God has been reviewing your file and discovered that you, like Mordecai, have received nothing for your faithful service? What if this Thursday is when he decides to settle the account? The instruction you receive won't just be about immediate obedience. It will be about positioning yourself to receive the verdict that's been building in your favor for decades. But here's what's going to determine whether you receive the commendation or miss the moment. Are you listening for your name to be called? Are you ready to respond when the divine bailiff announces, case of the faithful servant versus delayed justice defendant, please rise? Because what you do this Thursday won't just affect your personal destiny. Your obedience will set a precedent in heaven's courtroom that will echo through generations yet unborn. Your response will become case law for everyone connected to your bloodline. If you feel this in your spirit, if you sense that heaven is indeed reviewing your file, comment right now, heaven is reading my name. Because what I'm about to reveal next will show you exactly what verdict heaven is preparing to render and why Thursday's instruction will trigger an avalanche of restoration that will leave you speechless. As heaven's courtroom settles its verdict over your life, there's something else stirring in the spiritual realm, something so intimate, so personal, that it makes my spirit tremble just to speak of it. There's a sealed envelope in the spirit with your name on it, written in handwriting you'd recognize if you saw it, addressed with the kind of care that only comes from someone who knows every detail of your story, every crack in your heart, every dream you've buried beneath the weight of disappointment. And Thursday is delivery day. Dear chosen one, how many letters have you received in your lifetime that changed everything? The acceptance letter that opened doors, the medical report that brought relief, the handwritten note from someone you thought had forgotten you. Words have power, but divine words resurrect what was dead, restore what was stolen, and rewrite what seemed final. But here's what's haunting my spirit right now. Here's what's keeping me awake as I prepare this message for you. How many Thursdays have passed unopened? How many divine communications have been delivered to your spiritual address, only to sit unopened because you were too busy, too distracted, too convinced that God doesn't write personal letters to people like you? Some words are not delivered on Sunday, they arrive on a Thursday. Not in the noise of religious ceremony, but in the quiet of ordinary moments. Not through the loudspeaker of a sanctuary, but through the whisper of a sunset. Not in the crowd's applause, but in the silence after everyone else has gone home. Isaiah 55:11 declares with thunderous authority, "So is my word that goes out from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, but will accomplish what I desire and achieve the purpose for which I sent it." God's word never fails to find its target, never fails to accomplish its mission, never returns void. But what if you're the one who has to receive it? What if the effectiveness of God's word in your life depends not just on His sending, but on your receiving? What if your whole life has been waiting for one sentence whispered in silence? Think about that for a moment. 70, 80, 90 years of living, and it all comes down to one divine communication. One word from heaven that explains everything, resolves everything, redeems everything. One Thursday letter that makes sense of every Wednesday struggle you've endured. You've been wondering, haven't you? Wondering why certain doors never opened, why certain prayers seemed to echo in empty air, why certain seasons lasted so much longer than they should have. Why life felt like you were reading a book with missing pages. What if those missing pages are in the envelope with your name on it? What if every unanswered question, every unexplained delay, every detour that seemed like divine neglect was actually divine setup for the moment when you'd be ready to receive the explanation? Mary understood this when the angel appeared to her. Luke 1:29 tells us she was greatly troubled by his greeting and wondered what kind of greeting this might be. But then came the words that changed everything. "Do not be afraid, Mary. You have found favor with God." One sentence. One divine communication. And suddenly, her confusion transformed into clarity, her fear into faith, her ordinary life into extraordinary purpose. But here's what breaks my heart. Here's what makes me want to reach through this screen and shake you gently by the shoulders. How many words from God were addressed to you, but never read? How many divine letters arrived at the mailbox of your spirit while you were checking earthly mail? How many heavenly communications were delivered while you were distracted by cable news, by family drama, by the endless noise that drowns out the still, small voice? You remember the story of Samuel, don't you? A young boy lying in the temple when he heard his name called. 3 times he ran to Eli, thinking the old priest was calling him. But Eli finally realized what was happening and told Samuel, "Go and lie down, and if he calls you, say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening.' Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." When was the last time you positioned yourself to receive a divine letter? When was the last time you created space for God to deliver a personal word that could change everything? Because Thursday isn't just another day on your calendar. Thursday is delivery day for a message that's been in spiritual transit for years, maybe decades, waiting for the right moment when your heart would be desperate enough to receive it, broken enough to believe it, hungry enough to act on it. But you have to be listening when the divine mailman arrives. You have to be present when heaven knocks on your door with registered mail from eternity. What if the instruction you receive this Thursday isn't just about what to do, but about who you really are? What if it's not just a command, but a love letter? What if God isn't just telling you what to change, but what He's always seen in you that the world never recognized? What if your Thursday letter contains the words you've been waiting 70 years to hear? "Well done, faithful servant. You didn't miss it. You didn't fail me. You're right on time for what I've prepared." If you feel the tug right now, if something in your spirit is stirring with anticipation, if you sense that there really is a divine communication with your name on it, don't let this moment pass. Say it out loud right now. Don't let me miss my letter. Because what I'm about to tell you next will reveal not just what's in your Thursday letter, but why this particular word from God will trigger a generational shift that hell never saw coming. Chosen one, as we reach the end of this sacred journey together, I need you to carry these eternal truths with you like precious stones in your heart. Remember this. Thursday is not just another day on your calendar, it's your divine appointment with destiny. You are not too old, too forgotten, or too ordinary for God to use in extraordinary ways. Your file is being reviewed in heaven's courtroom, and there's a sealed letter with your name on it waiting to be delivered. Your mantle didn't retire, it's rising. But more than anything, remember this: you are not walking this path alone. The same God who parted the Red Sea, who made the sun stand still, who raised Jesus from the dead, is still working in your life right now. He sees every tear you've shed in secret. He knows every battle you've fought in silence. He counted every act of faithfulness when no one else was watching. Even when you feel invisible to the world, you are never invisible to Him. Romans 8:28 still applies to your Thursday, to your season, to your story, and we know that all things work together for good, to them that love God, to them who are called according to His purpose. And right here, in this community of believers, you have thousands of spiritual family members who understand your journey. We've walked similar paths, we've felt the same stirrings, we've heard the same whispers. You're not alone in this calling, and you never will be. Now let me ask you one final question that will echo in your heart long after this video ends. When Thursday comes, when heaven calls your name, when the instruction arrives, when your moment of divine appointment presents its, will you be ready to say yes? Will you turn aside to investigate your burning bush? Or will you keep walking? Will you answer when your name is called in heaven's courtroom, or will you let the moment pass? Will you open the letter addressed specifically to you, or will you let it remain sealed? Before you answer, let me place my hand on your shoulder through these words and pray over your life with the authority that comes from knowing God's heart for His chosen ones. Heavenly Father, I lift up every precious soul who has journeyed with us today. Lord, you see them, not just their circumstances, but their hearts. You know their struggles, their doubts, their fears about whether they still matter in your kingdom. Today, silence every voice that has whispered, they're too old, too late, too ordinary. Father, prepare their hearts for Thursday. Make their spiritual ears sensitive to your voice. Open their eyes to see the burning bushes you place in their path. Give them courage to turn aside when you call, wisdom to recognize your instructions, and faith to obey even when it doesn't make sense. God, bless their families, heal their bodies, provide for their needs, restore what the enemy has stolen. Give them peaceful sleep and hopeful mornings. Surround them with people who see their value and honor their journey. Most of all, Lord, let them feel your presence right now. Let them know in their spirits that they are loved beyond measure, chosen beyond doubt, and called beyond their understanding. Remove every shadow of rejection, every whisper of worthlessness, every lie about their relevance. In Jesus' mighty name, I seal this prayer and release your perfect peace over their lives. Amen. Now, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us what stirred in your spirit today. What is God calling you to believe? What instructions are you sensing for your Thursday? Don't keep this to yourself. Your testimony might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. If you need prayer for a specific situation, ask us. This community will surround you with intercession. If God spoke something specific to your heart during this message, share it. Someone else might be waiting for confirmation of what they're feeling too. And please, if this message touched your soul, share it with someone who needs to remember they're not forgotten. There's a chosen one in your life who feels exactly like you felt when you first clicked on this video. Be the vessel that carries this hope to them. Thank you for staying with me through this entire prophetic word. Thank you for opening your heart, for believing that God still speaks, for trusting that your Thursday matters. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel and ring that notification bell. We're building something beautiful here. Community where faith grows, hope is restored, and destinies are fulfilled. Until Thursday comes, walk in the confidence of who you are, chosen, beloved, and right on time for everything God has planned. Your divine appointment awaits.